Imagine this. A billionaire husband accuses his pregnant wife of betrayal, live on stage in front of hundreds of guests while millions watch on TikTok. He swears he can't be the father because of a secret vasectomy. But what happens when a DNA test reveals the truth? Lies, deepfakes, betrayal, even a corporate empire collapsing, and one woman's fight to turn humiliation into power. Stay with me, because this story takes twists you will not believe until the very last second. And if you love shocking, true-style dramas like this, make sure to hit like, drop a comment with your thoughts, share this video with a friend, and subscribe so you don't miss the next jaw-dropping story. The champagne fountain sparkled under the Four Seasons Ballroom's crystal chandeliers, each bubble catching light like tiny diamonds floating upward. Charlotte Sterling stood at the edge of the crowd, her designer gown hugging her figure perfectly, watching her husband command the room with his presence. Alexander Sterling, tech industry titan, was in his element, surrounded by investors, politicians, and media personalities who hung on his every word about Sterling Tech's historic IPO. "Ladies and gentlemen," Alex's voice boomed through the sound system, his confidence radiating across the ballroom, filled with 300 of New York's elite. "Today marks not just Sterling Tech going public at $42 billion, but the beginning of a new era in surveillance technology that will keep our families safer." Charlotte felt her smartwatch vibrate against her wrist. She glanced down, expecting another congratulatory message. Instead, her breath caught. The health app notification read, "Pregnancy detected, estimated 5 weeks. Schedule prenatal appointment." Her hand instinctively moved to her stomach. Pregnant. After 2 years of trying, of fertility treatments that Alex had reluctantly agreed to, of fights about his lack of interest in starting a family, she looked up at her husband, ready to share this miracle when his eyes met hers across the room. The expression on his face wasn't love or excitement. It was cold calculation, the same look he gave competitors before destroying their companies. "Charlie, darling," Victoria Chase's voice slithered beside her. Alex's ex-wife shouldn't even be here, but somehow she always managed to appear at the worst moments. "You look pale. Everything all right?" "Fine," Charlotte managed, forcing a smile. Victoria's pharmaceutical heiress status gave her access to every elite event, despite the restraining order Alex had tried to get after their messy divorce. "As I was saying," Alex continued his speech, "trust is earned through verification. In business and in life, we must never accept anything at face value." Charlotte's phone buzzed. A text from Alex. "Come to the presidential suite, now." She excused herself, heels clicking against marble as she made her way to the elevator. Her mind raced with how to frame this joy in a way that wouldn't trigger his paranoia. His first wife, before Victoria, had cheated on him, a trauma he wore like armor, using it to justify his need for control. The suite door was already open. Alex stood by the window, his back to her, Manhattan's skyline glittering behind him. "You're pregnant," he said without turning around. "How did you—" "Your smartwatch data syncs to my monitoring app. I know your heart rate, your temperature, your location every second of every day." He turned, his green eyes arctic. "The question is, whose baby is it?" "What?" Charlotte's joy shattered like the champagne glass she didn't realize she'd been holding. It fell to the carpet, crystal fragments scattering. "Alex, it's our baby. We've been trying for 2 years." "Trying," he repeated, walking closer. "Yes, we have been trying, which is why I had some tests done last month. Privately." "Tests?" "My sperm count, Charlotte. It's essentially 0, has been for 5 years since my vasectomy." The room spun. "Your what? You never told me about any vasectomy." "I had it during my marriage to Victoria. Never reversed it. The chance of pregnancy is less than 1%. His voice was clinical, detached. "So I'll ask again. Whose baby is it?" "This is insane. You're the only man I've been with since we met 4 years ago. You know this. You track my every move." "Do I? You had lunch with Marcus Thompson last week. 47 minutes at the St. Regis. My ex-fiancé, who happens to be your chief legal counsel, the lunch you approved for the contract review." Charlotte's voice rose. "You're paranoid." "Am I? Or am I just seeing patterns?" Alex pulled out his phone, showing her a spreadsheet. Your gym schedule changed 6 weeks ago. You started going to the location on 72nd Street instead of our home gym. Marcus's apartment is 3 blocks away. Because they have prenatal yoga classes, Charlotte shouted, then caught herself. She'd switched gyms hoping to surprise him with the pregnancy when it happened. Convenient excuse. Alex's fingers flew across his phone screen. I've already instructed Marcus to prepare a press statement for tomorrow. We'll announce our conscious uncoupling, cite irreconcilable differences. You're divorcing me? Without even taking a test to prove the test would be meaningless. You could have easily manipulated it. I know how these things work. He walked to the door, opening it. Security will help you pack your things from the penthouse. You'll have access to the guest house in the Hamptons until we sort out the legal details. Charlotte stood frozen, her mind unable to process the last 5 minutes. Alex, please. This is your child. Our child. No, he said quietly, his face a mask of controlled fury. It's your mistake. And tomorrow everyone will know exactly what kind of woman you are. The door closed with a soft click, leaving Charlotte alone in the suite, crystal fragments around her feet catching the city lights. Like tears she refused to shed. Charlotte barely slept in the Hamptons guest house, a generous accommodation that felt more like exile. The morning brought 53 missed calls from her publicist and a simple text from Alex. Charity gala tonight, attend or breach contract, wear the blue Valentino. The prenuptial agreement's public appearance clause. She had to attend any event he deemed necessary for their image or forfeit her settlement rights. Even amid destroying her, Alex insisted on controlling the narrative. She arrived at the estate's main house as guests began filling the massive tent erected on the back lawn. 300 of the Hamptons' most influential residents, all here for the annual Sterling Foundation Gala benefiting children's hospitals. The irony wasn't lost on her. Charlotte, her mother's voice carried across the crowd. Patricia and Robert Hayes had driven up from their Texas evangelical community, proud parents glowing with the success of their daughter's marriage to one of America's richest men. Mom, Dad, Charlotte embraced them, fighting tears. I need to tell you something. Later, sweetheart, her father interrupted, beaming. Pastor Williams is here. Alexander donated $5 million to our church's building fund. We're naming the new sanctuary after him. Charlotte's stomach turned. Pastor Williams, who'd counseled her through her broken engagement with Marcus, who'd celebrated her wedding to Alex, was now financially bound to her husband. Ladies and gentlemen, Alex's voice echoed through the tense sound system. He stood on the elevated stage, looking every inch the benevolent billionaire in his custom tuxedo. Thank you for joining us tonight to support children in need. Charlotte noticed the cameras, not just the usual society photographers, but news crews. CNN, Fox, MSNBC. Why would national media cover a local charity gala? Before we begin tonight's program, Alex continued, his eyes finding Charlotte in the crowd, I need to address something personal. My wife Charlotte has an announcement. The spotlight swung to her. 300 faces turned. Charlotte's legs moved without her conscious thought, carrying her to the stage. Alex handed her the microphone with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. She began, then stopped. What was she supposed to say? Go on, darling, Alex said loudly enough for his voice to carry without the mic. Tell them about the pregnancy. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Her mother's face lit up with joy. Charlotte's mouth went dry. We're having a baby. Are we, though? Alex took the microphone back. See, that's the interesting thing about modern technology. It can reveal so many secrets. He pulled out his phone, connecting it to the large screens flanking the stage. Like how my wife has been visiting an apartment building 3 blocks from her new gym, the same building where her ex-fiancé lives. Blurry surveillance photos appeared on screen, Charlotte entering and leaving Marcus's building, timestamps visible. Those are from client meetings, Charlotte said, her voice barely working. Marcus is your chief legal counsel. You sent me there to review contracts. Did I? I have no record of that. Alex swiped to new images. Or how about these fertility clinic visits, alone, without me? You were in Tokyo. You said to start without you. Ladies and gentlemen, Alex's voice overrode hers. 5 years ago, I had a vasectomy. The chance of my wife's pregnancy being legitimate is less than 1%. The crowd erupted. Charlotte saw her mother's face crumble, her father's expression hardening. Phones appeared in every hand, recording, live streaming, broadcasting her humiliation to the world. "You're wrong," Charlotte said into the chaos. But without the microphone, her voice was lost. "Security," Alex called calmly. "Please escort Mrs. Sterling to her car." Two guards appeared at her elbows. As they led her away, Charlotte heard her father's voice cutting through the noise. "We didn't raise you to be this kind of woman." The last thing she saw was Victoria Chase in the corner, raising a champagne glass in a mock toast, her smile triumphant. By the time Charlotte reached the guest house, that billionaire baby drama was trending #1 worldwide. A live stream clip from a guest's TikTok had 2 million views and counting. The comments were brutal. "Gold digger got caught. Poor billionaire. Betrayed twice. She belongs to the streets." Charlotte's phone rang. Her lawyer, David Anderson, sounded panicked. "Charlotte, I've been served with papers. Alex is filing for divorce on grounds of adultery. He's also seeking a restraining order, claiming emotional distress. You need better representation than me. This is going to get ugly." "How much uglier can it get?" "He's frozen your joint accounts pending investigation of potential fraud. You have access to your personal account, about 50,000, but everything else is locked." Charlotte hung up and opened her banking app. $48,000, her entire accessible worth, while carrying the child of a man worth $8 billion. A new text from an unknown number appeared. "You should have stayed in Texas, beauty queen. This is what happens when you reach above your station. V. Victoria." Of course she was involved somehow. Charlotte placed a protective hand over her stomach. "It's okay, little one," she whispered to the life growing inside her. "Mommy's going to fight. But first, we need to find out why Daddy lied about that vasectomy." Her phone buzzed again. Marcus Thompson. "Charlie, I'm sorry about tonight. We need to talk. There's something you don't know about Alex's medical history." The diner in Queens was the last place anyone would expect to find Charlotte Sterling, which is exactly why Marcus Thompson had chosen it. He sat in the back booth, baseball cap pulled low, looking nothing like the chief legal counsel of a $42 billion company. Charlotte slid in across from him, her designer clothes replaced with jeans and a hoodie, though dark circles under her eyes revealed her sleepless night. "You have 5 minutes before I assume this is another trap." "Charlie, I'm risking everything being here." Marcus pushed a manila folder across the table. "My career, my law license, probably my safety. But I can't watch him destroy you like this." She opened the folder. Medical records from Mount Sinai Hospital, dated 6 months ago. Vasovasostomy reversal procedure. Patient, Alexander Sterling. "He had the vasectomy reversed 6 months ago," Marcus said quietly. "Right after your second IVF cycle failed. He made me notarize the paperwork but told me to keep it sealed, said it was for insurance purposes." Charlotte's hands shook. "He reversed it? Then he knows he could be the father. He knows, and he's still—" "There's more." Marcus pulled out his phone, showing her an encrypted message thread. "These are communications between Victoria's assistant and someone at your fertility clinic. They've been planning something for months." "Dr. Helena Winters," Charlotte read aloud. "She was so kind, so supportive during our treatments. She's Victoria's cousin. Changed her last name after medical school. Victoria placed her there 2 years ago, right when you started trying to conceive." The diner's fluorescent lights suddenly felt too bright. Charlotte gripped the table's edge. "They've been planning this for 2 years?" "Victoria never got over the divorce. Alex left her for you, remember? She lost half her pharmaceutical empire in the settlement. She wants revenge, and you're the perfect target." "But the baby is Alex's. It has to be. He's the only one I've been with." Marcus's expression grew pained. "Charlie, that's not the story being told. Victoria's team created something. Videos, deep fakes. They're about to release them." "Videos of what?" "You and me, together. They're completely fabricated, but they look real. The technology is terrifying." Charlotte's phone buzzed. A notification from TMZ. "Breaking, intimate video proves Sterling wife's affair with ex-fiancé." Her stomach dropped as she clicked the link. The video was grainy but clear enough, her face, her body, in a hotel room with Marcus. Everything about it was wrong, but it looked devastatingly real. "Oh my God," she whispered. The view count was already at 3 million. "We need to get you somewhere safe," Marcus said urgently. "This is just the beginning." Alex doesn't know about Victoria's involvement yet. He genuinely believes you cheated because that's what she wants him to believe. "I need to tell him." He won't listen. Not now. His paranoia is in full control. Marcus's phone rang. He looked at the caller ID and paled. "It's him. Don't answer." But Marcus had already accepted the call, putting it on speaker. Alex's voice was deadly calm. "Marcus, I'm looking at some interesting security footage from a diner in Queens. Would you like to explain why you're meeting with my soon-to-be ex-wife?" "Alex, you need to listen. You're fired. Security is already at your office. If you're not out of the state by tomorrow, I'll have you disbarred. As for you, Charlotte, if you're listening, your parents just called. They've seen the video. Their exact words were, 'Don't come home. We're done with you.'" The line went dead. Charlotte stared at the phone, then ran to the bathroom, barely making it before the morning sickness hit. When she emerged, Marcus was typing frantically on his laptop. "I'm sending you everything I have," he said. "Every document, every communication. My career is over anyway. At least the truth will be out there." "Why are you doing this? We haven't spoken in 3 years." Marcus looked up, his brown eyes sad. "Because once upon a time, I loved you, and because nobody deserves what they were doing to you. Not even for all the money in the world." Charlotte's phone rang. Her mother. "How could you?" Patricia Hayes' voice was thick with tears. "That video, the whole congregation has seen it. Pastor Williams showed it during an emergency prayer meeting for fallen women. You've destroyed our family's reputation." "Mom, it's fake. The video is fake, please." "Don't lie to me, Charlotte Ann Hayes. We raised you in the church. We taught you right from wrong. Your father has already spoken to the church board. We're formally disowning you. Don't contact us again." The call ended. Charlotte sat frozen, orphaned by her own parents over a lie. "Yabam." "Charlie," Marcus said gently, "you need a lawyer, a real one. Someone who can fight Kirkland and Ellis." "With what money? I have $48,000 to my name." "There's someone. Diane Miller. She takes cases pro bono when she believes in them. She especially hates men who abuse power." He slid a business card across the table. "Call her, today." As Charlotte reached for the card, pain shot through her abdomen. Sharp, wrong. She gasped, doubling over. "Charlie?" "Something's wrong," she managed through gritted teeth. "The baby?" Marcus was already calling 911. As they waited for the ambulance, Charlotte felt warmth spreading down her legs. "Blood. Please," she whispered, though she wasn't sure if she was praying to God or begging the universe. "Please don't take my baby too." The emergency room at Presbyterian Hospital was chaos, but Charlotte's pain cut through everything else. The paramedics wheeled her in as she gripped the gurney's rails, Marcus running alongside despite the risk to his career. 28-year-old female, approximately 8 weeks pregnant, severe abdominal pain and vaginal bleeding, the paramedic announced. Possible miscarriage in progress. "I need her insurance information," the registration clerk said, fingers poised over keyboard. Marcus pulled out his phone. "She's covered under Sterling Tech's executive plan." "That coverage was terminated this morning," the clerk interrupted, looking at her screen. "The account holder, Alexander Sterling, removed her as of 9 a.m. "That's illegal," Marcus protested. "She's his wife. You can't just—" "Then she'll need to apply for COBRA continuation or pay privately. The emergency evaluation will be $17,000 to start." Charlotte struggled to sit up through the pain. I have a credit card." "Ma'am, you need to lie down," a nurse said firmly. "Process my card first," Charlotte gasped. "Please, I can't lose this baby." The next hour blurred into a nightmare of medical terms and procedures. Dr. Sarah Martinez, the emergency obstetric specialist, performed an ultrasound with a grim expression. "Mrs. Sterling, you're experiencing a threatened miscarriage. The placenta is partially detaching. We need to admit you immediately for monitoring and treatment." "Is the baby—" "There's still a heartbeat, but it's weak. The next 24 hours are critical." Charlotte was moved to a private room, though private was relative. Marcus had to leave when hospital security arrived, sent by Alex's team. She was alone when her husband walked in, flanked by two lawyers. "Alex," she breathed, hope flickering. "The baby needs help, our baby." "I'm here for one reason," he said coldly, placing documents on her bedside table. "Sign these. Admit the adultery, agree to the divorce terms, and I'll authorize the insurance coverage for your treatment." Charlotte looked at the papers through tears. Complete admission of guilt, forfeiture of all marital assets, agreement never to speak publicly about their marriage. "You're blackmailing me while I'm losing our child?" "Your child?" "With Marcus, apparently. Though after seeing that video, I'm wondering how many others there were." "The video is fake." Charlotte's heart monitor spiked. "Victoria is behind this. She's been planning." "Victoria?" Alex laughed bitterly. "You're really going to blame my ex-wife? How convenient." Dr. Martinez entered, alarmed by the monitor alerts. "Mr. Sterling, I need to ask you to leave. Your presence is causing stress that could—" "I'm her husband and I have rights. Not over my patient's medical care. Leave or I call security." Alex leaned close to Charlotte. "Sign the papers or handle this alone. You have 1 hour." After he left, Dr. Martinez checked the monitors. "Your blood pressure is dangerously high. We need to start magnesium sulfate to prevent seizures." "I can't sign those papers," Charlotte whispered. "If I do, my baby will grow up thinking their mother was a cheater, a gold digger. But if I don't—" "Mrs. Sterling," the doctor said gently, "I shouldn't say this, but I've seen men like your husband before. They use moments of vulnerability as weapons. Whatever you decide, decide for you and your baby, not out of fear." Charlotte's phone buzzed. Diane Miller, the lawyer Marcus had recommended. "I've reviewed your case. I'll take it pro bono. Do not sign anything. I'm on my way." For the first time in 48 hours, Charlotte felt a spark of hope. That spark dimmed when the contractions started at 2 a.m. "It's too early," she gasped to the night nurse. "I'm only 8 weeks." "Dr. Martinez, stat to room 312, the nurse called urgently. The next hours became a battle measured in heartbeats. The baby's growing weaker on the monitor, and Charlotte's racing with fear. Diane Miller arrived at dawn, a sharp-dressed woman who looked like she could stare down the devil himself. "Charlotte, I've filed an emergency injunction preventing Alex from cutting off your insurance. It's illegal under both COBRA and spousal support laws during pregnancy. Can you save my baby's inheritance rights?" "First, let's focus on saving your baby." By noon, Charlotte was stable but exhausted. The baby's heartbeat had strengthened slightly. Dr. Martinez was cautiously optimistic. "You need complete bed rest. Any stress could trigger complete placental abruption." That's when the news alert appeared on the room's television. Sterling Tech CEO announces wife's pregnancy may be medical fraud. Alex was holding a press conference presenting documents. "My wife visited fertility clinics alone, potentially using donor sperm without my knowledge while claiming we were trying together. This is reproductive fraud of the highest order." Charlotte's monitor alarm started screaming. The last thing she heard before darkness claimed her was Dr. Martinez shouting for emergency surgery prep. Charlotte woke to the sound of steady beeping and soft voices. Her hand immediately went to her stomach. Still there, still pregnant. The relief nearly made her weep. 23 weeks, Diane Miller said from the chair beside her bed. "You've been in and out for 3 weeks, but you're both okay." 3 weeks? Charlotte's voice was hoarse. "What happened?" "Emergency circlage to prevent premature labor. You've been on strict hospital bed rest." Diane pulled out her tablet. "While you've been fighting for your baby's life, we've been fighting Alex in court. And Charlotte, we found something extraordinary." The tablet showed a lab report from Mount Sinai. "These are Alex's real fertility results from 6 months ago, after his reversal. Not just viable, exceptionally high sperm count. Dr. Winters had been sending him falsified reports showing 0 count. But why would she? Victoria paid her $2 million through offshore accounts. We have the banking records. But here's the crucial part. Dr. Winters never actually tampered with your fertility treatments. She only falsified what she told Alex. The baby is definitely his." Charlotte struggled to process this. "So, Victoria wanted Alex to think I cheated?" "Exactly. Create the paranoia. Let his nature do the rest. But she didn't count on Marcus keeping copies of Alex's reversal surgery records. Where is Marcus? Witness protection, essentially. He's been getting death threats from Alex's more fanatical supporters, but he's testifying next week. A knock at the door interrupted them. Pastor Williams entered with Charlotte's parents. Her mother looked older, worn down by shame and regret. Charlotte, Patricia Hayes began, then stopped, tears falling. We were wrong. That lawyer of yours, she proved the video was fake. The whole congregation knows we abandoned you over a lie. The church board has asked for my resignation, Pastor Williams added quietly. When it came out that I took $5 million from your husband while publicly condemning you, it doesn't look good. Charlotte's father couldn't meet her eyes. Can you forgive us? Before Charlotte could answer, alarms started blaring. Dr. Martinez rushed in. You're dilating. The circlage is failing. But I'm only 23 weeks. We need to prep for emergency delivery. The baby's chances, the doctor hesitated. 23 weeks is viable, but survival rate is only about 35%. Call Alex, Charlotte gasped through sudden contractions. Whatever he thinks of me, this is his child being born. Diane was already dialing. Charlotte heard her leaving a voicemail. Mr. Sterling, your wife is in premature labor. Whatever your feelings, your child needs their father here. 4 hours of labor, 4 hours of Charlotte fighting to keep her baby inside just a little longer, each minute increasing survival chances. Her parents stood by helplessly, their prayers feeling hollow after their betrayal. I can't stop it, Martinez finally said. We need to deliver now. Is Alex? No word from Mr. Sterling, Diane said grimly. Charlotte sobbed from pain, from abandonment, from fear for her baby. As they wheeled her to the operating room, she made a vow. You'll survive this, little one. You'll survive, and you'll know you were loved, even if your father couldn't see past his own paranoia. The delivery was swift once it started. Charlotte heard the tiniest cry, more like a kitten's mew than a baby's wail, before they rushed her son to the NICU. 2 pounds, 3 ounces, Dr. Martinez reported. He's fighting, Charlotte. He's small, but he's fighting. Charlotte was still recovering from anesthesia when Diane returned with a laptop. You need to see this. Someone leaked the security footage from Victoria's meetings with Dr. Winters. They're discussing the entire plan. The fake videos, the falsified medical reports, everything. On the grainy footage, Victoria's voice was clear. I want Charlotte destroyed. I want Alex to feel what I felt when he left me for that Texas nobody. Make him believe the baby isn't his. His paranoia will do the rest. Who leaked this? Anonymous source, but it's been authenticated. The FBI is now involved. Wire fraud, conspiracy, cyber crimes with those deep fakes. Victoria and Dr. Winters are about to be arrested. Charlotte tried to sit up. I need to see my son. Tomorrow, Dr. Martinez said firmly. You hemorrhaged during delivery. You need to recover or you won't be able to help him. That night, as Charlotte lay alone in her hospital bed, her phone buzzed with a news alert. Sterling Tech stock plummets as CEO's scandal deepens. Board calls emergency meeting. Good, she thought. Let him lose something too. But when she finally made it to the NICU the next morning, when she saw her tiny son covered in tubes and wires, his skin translucent, his breathing supported by machines, all thoughts of revenge evaporated. Hi, baby, she whispered through the incubator. I'm your mommy, and I'm going to make sure you know every single day that you were wanted, you were loved, and you were worth everything I'm fighting for. The NICU nurse smiled sadly. Have you chosen a name? Charlotte thought of strength, of truth, of justice. Ethan James Sterling. It means strong and firm. Sterling, even after... He's still Alex's son. Whatever his father has become, this child deserves his birthright. Behind her, Charlotte heard a familiar voice. Is that him? She turned. Alex stood in the doorway, his usually perfect appearance disheveled, his eyes red-rimmed. What are you doing here? The FBI showed me the footage. Victoria's confession. Dr. Winters admitted everything. His voice broke. Charlotte, the baby is mine? He was always yours, Alex. I tried to tell you. Alex approached the incubator slowly, as if afraid. When he saw Ethan, so small, so fragile, something shifted in his expression. My God, what have I done? The NICU was silent except for the rhythmic beeping of monitors and the soft whoosh of ventilators. Alex stood frozen, staring at his son, 2 pounds of humanity that dismantled $8 billion worth of paranoid certainty. Can I, can I touch him? Alex's voice was barely a whisper. You need to scrub in first, the nurse said coldly. She'd been there when Charlotte arrived alone in labor, had held Charlotte's hand when she sobbed for her absent husband. As Alex washed his hands, Charlotte watched him with a mixture of exhaustion and anger. The board called you? They're meeting tomorrow. My removal is all but certain. He dried his hands methodically. The FBI arrested Victoria an hour ago. Dr. Winters is already in custody. They're both looking at federal charges, wire fraud, conspiracy, cyber terrorism for the deep fakes. And you believe them over me. Charlotte, you made me deliver our son alone. 23 weeks, Alex. Do you know what his chances are? 35%. His voice cracked. I looked it up on the way here. 35% survival rate. 60% chance of major disabilities if he survives. Now you research. Now you care about facts. Alex reached through the incubator's port, his finger hovering near Ethan's impossibly tiny hand. I destroyed everything, didn't I? Yes. The single word hung between them like a blade. Mr. Sterling? A young man in a suit appeared at the NICU door. I'm from CNBC. You're scheduled for the power lunch interview in an hour. Cancel it. Sir, the board specifically requested. I said cancel it. Actually, Charlotte interrupted, her voice steel. You should go, Alex. Go explain to the world how you destroyed your pregnant wife's life over lies you were too paranoid to verify. Go tell them how you stood in front of 300 people and called me an adulteress while our son grew inside me. Go. Alex looked between Charlotte and Ethan. I can't leave him. What if what? What if he dies while you're gone? Like how I almost died while you were threatening me in the emergency room. You don't get to play concerned father now. The assistant shifted nervously. Sir, the car is waiting. Alex straightened his tie, the gesture automatic. I'll be back. Don't bother, Charlotte said quietly. Diane has already filed my custody petition. After what you've done, no judge in New York would give you unsupervised access. An hour later, Charlotte watched on her phone as Alex sat across from the CNBC anchors. He looked polished, controlled, until they started asking questions. Mr. Sterling, can you explain how you accused your pregnant wife of adultery on stage? I received false information. From your ex-wife, who's now under federal arrest? I didn't know Victoria was involved, but you knew you'd had your vasectomy reversed 6 months ago. You knew pregnancy was possible. Alex's hands started trembling. The reports said, the falsified reports. Mr. Sterling, did you ever simply ask your wife for a paternity test before publicly destroying her? I believed. You believed fake videos that experts are calling obviously fabricated? A tech billionaire couldn't spot a deep fake? Alex's breathing became erratic. The anchor leaned forward. Mr. Sterling, are you all right? But Alex wasn't all right. On live television, in front of millions of viewers, Alexander Sterling, the man who'd built an empire on surveillance and control, had a complete panic attack. He gasped for air, pulling at his collar, sweat beading on his forehead. My son is dying, The producers cut to commercial, but the damage was done. Within minutes, clips flooded social media. Sterling tech stock dropped 47% in after-hours trading. Back in the NICU, Charlotte's phone rang constantly. Reporters, investors, friends who'd abandoned her now wanting the inside story. She silenced them all, focused only on Ethan's tiny chest rising and falling. Her parents sat quietly in the corner, their shame palpable. We'll stay, her mother offered tentatively. If you'll have us, we'll stay and help. I don't need help from people who disowned me over a lie. Charlotte, please, her father started. No, you chose to believe the worst of me without question. You let Pastor Williams shame me from the pulpit. You told me not to come home. Charlotte's voice was steady, controlled. Right now, my son needs me to be strong. I can't be strong while managing your guilt. Please leave. They left, aged by their choices. Diane arrived as they departed. Charlotte, I have news. The judge granted an emergency ruling. You have temporary sole custody. Alex gets supervised visitation only, 2 hours a week. What about finances? The prenup is void, fraud, and duress. The judge was particularly moved by the security footage of Alex threatening you during premature labor. Diane smiled grimly. You're getting half of everything, $4 billion. Charlotte laughed bitterly. $4 billion, and my son might not survive the night. As if in response, Ethan's monitors began alarming. Dr. Martinez rushed in with a team. He's going into respiratory distress. We need to intubate. Charlotte watched helplessly as they worked on her tiny son, inserting tubes that looked enormous against his fragile body. Each second stretched into eternity until finally the alarms quieted. He's stable, Dr. Martinez said. But Charlotte, you need to prepare yourself. The next 72 hours are critical. Charlotte settled into the chair beside the incubator, her hand resting against the plastic. I'm not going anywhere. Mrs. Sterling? A new voice. Charlotte looked up to see a woman in designer clothes, but with kind eyes. I'm Emma Johnson. I was supposed to marry Alex next month. Charlotte studied the younger woman, 26, maybe 27, beautiful in that carefully maintained way Alex preferred. Was? I watched the interview. I saw the footage from the gala. I heard how he treated you. Emma pulled out a ring box, setting it on the table. I wanted you to know you're not alone. He's been tracking my phone, my emails, installing cameras in my apartment without telling me. I thought it was protective. Now I see what it really was. Control, Charlotte finished. Yes, and I wanted to thank you. Your story saved me from making the worst mistake of my life. After Emma left, Charlotte sat in the dim NICU, watching her son fight for each breath. Her phone showed the world exploding, Alex's empire crumbling, Victoria's arrest, the complete vindication of Charlotte Sterling. But none of it mattered. Only the tiny fingers that curled around hers, the smallest sign that Ethan knew his mother was there, fighting alongside him. 6 weeks passed in the NICU's perpetual twilight. Ethan had graduated from the ventilator to CPAP, then finally to breathing on his own. 3 pounds, 8 ounces. Each ounce of victory Charlotte celebrated alone. The morning of the custody hearing arrived gray and bitter, March wind cutting through downtown Manhattan. Charlotte dressed carefully in the suit Diane had chosen, professional but not aggressive, maternal but not weak. The media circus outside the courthouse was overwhelming. Charlotte, how does it feel to take down a billionaire? Mrs. Sterling, is it true you're getting $4 billion in the settlement? Will you let Alex see his son? Diane guided her through the crowd. Remember, today isn't about the money, it's about custody. The judge needs to see you're the stable parent. Inside, Alex sat with his new legal team, 3 partners from Wachtell Lipton, each billing $2,000 an hour. He looked diminished, his usual commanding presence replaced with something hollow. Their eyes met across the aisle. Charlotte felt nothing. All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Kellerman. Judge Kellerman was 73, had been on family court for 30 years, and had, according to Diane, seen every type of toxic divorce imaginable. We're here to determine custody arrangements for Ethan James Sterling, born January 15th, currently in NICU care at Presbyterian Hospital. The judge looked over her glasses. I've reviewed the evidence, including security footage, medical records, and FBI documentation regarding the conspiracy against Mrs. Sterling. Mr. Sterling, your behavior has been appalling. Alex's lead attorney stood. Your Honor, my client was the victim of an elaborate fraud perpetrated by his ex-wife. His reactions, while regrettable, were based on false information designed to trigger his documented anxiety disorder. Counselor, Judge Kellerman interrupted. Are you seriously arguing that Mr. Sterling's anxiety disorder excuses publicly humiliating his pregnant wife, cutting off her medical insurance during a high-risk pregnancy, and abandoning her during premature labor? We're arguing for context, Your Honor. I have all the context I need. Mr. Sterling, stand up. Alex rose unsteadily. In my 30 years on this bench, I have rarely seen such calculated cruelty toward a pregnant woman. You used your wealth and power to systematically destroy your wife's support system, reputation, and nearly cost her life in the life of your child. Your Honor, I was deceived. You were paranoid. There's a difference. You had every resource available to verify the truth, and instead you chose to believe the worst because it confirmed your existing bias. The judge pulled out a document. This is your son's medical record. Born at 23 weeks, 5 days, 2 pounds, 3 ounces. Currently suffering from chronic lung disease, retinopathy of prematurity, and facing potential developmental delays. She looked directly at Alex. While your wife sat alone in the NICU, holding your son through his first cardiac arrest, you were doing damage control interviews. While she learned to feed him through a nasogastric tube, you were fighting to protect assets in the Cayman Islands. Charlotte watched Alex shrink with each word. Mrs. Sterling, the judge turned to Charlotte, you've requested sole custody with supervised visitation. Tell me why I shouldn't simply terminate Mr. Sterling's parental rights entirely. Charlotte stood, Diane beside her. Because despite everything, Ethan deserves the chance to know his father. Not the paranoid, controlling man who destroyed our family, but perhaps someone who might learn from this. Children need to make their own judgments about their parents with appropriate protection. Judge Kellerman nodded. Very gracious, considering the circumstances. Here's my ruling. Charlotte Sterling is awarded sole physical and legal custody of Ethan James Sterling. Alexander Sterling is granted supervised visitation, 2 hours per week, at a location and with a supervisor of Mrs. Sterling's choosing. This arrangement will be reviewed in 1 year. Your Honor, Alex's attorney protested, 2 hours a week for a father who's never been accused of physical violence. A father who committed prolonged psychological violence against a pregnant woman. 2 hours supervised or nothing. Mr. Sterling, you're fortunate your wife is more generous than you deserve. Furthermore, the judge continued, regarding the financial settlement, the prenuptial agreement is void due to fraud and duress. The marital assets will be divided equally. Mr. Sterling, you will also pay all medical expenses for Ethan, estimated at $4 million for his first year of life, plus child support of $50,000 monthly until age 21. The gavel came down with finality. In the hallway afterward, Alex approached Charlotte. His legal team tried to stop him, but he shrugged them off. Charlotte, please, 5 minutes. You have 2 hours a week with Ethan, supervised. Don't waste them talking to me. I need you to know Victoria showed me fabricated evidence for months before the gala. She knew exactly how to trigger my paranoia. The surveillance, the tracking, it all started after she began planting seeds of doubt. And you still chose to believe it. You still chose cruelty over communication. I know, I'm in therapy now. Real therapy, not the performative kind for the media. Charlotte studied him, this man who'd once promised to love and protect her, who'd given her a son and nearly killed them both with his paranoia. Alex, you had everything. A wife who loved you, a baby on the way, more money than generations could spend. And you threw it all away because you couldn't trust. That's not Victoria's fault. That's yours. I want to be better for Ethan. Then be better, but not for me to see, not for the courts. Be better because our son deserves a father who can love without conditions, trust without surveillance, and protect without destroying. Charlotte walked away, leaving Alex standing alone in the courthouse hallway, $8 billion poorer in assets, infinitely poorer in everything that mattered. That evening, Charlotte sat beside Ethan's hospital crib. He'd finally graduated from the incubator. 4 pounds now, breathing independently, taking bottles. The nurse had decorated his space with tiny stars and moons. Your daddy came to court today, she whispered to her sleeping son. He's lost and broken and maybe beyond repair. But you, my little warrior, you're perfect. You're strong, and you'll never wonder if you're loved. Her phone buzzed, a news alert. Victoria Chase pleads guilty to federal charges, faces 8 years in prison. Charlotte deleted it without reading more. The past was settling its debts. The future, Ethan's future, was all that mattered now. 18 months later, Charlotte stood in the gleaming conference room of the Phoenix Foundation, watching the Manhattan skyline shimmer in afternoon light. The building, purchased with part of her settlement, had been Alex's former satellite office. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. We've helped 3,000 women in our first year. Her chief operating officer, Diane Miller, who joined full-time after the trial, reported to the board. Financial abuse intervention, legal services, emergency housing. Our app has been downloaded 2 million times. Charlotte shifted Ethan on her hip. At 19 months, he was small for his age, but meeting his developmental milestones. His lung issues required daily medication. His vision needed correction, but he was bright, curious, and had his father's green eyes without the coldness behind them. The Times wants to do a profile, Diane continued. They're calling you the billionaire who gave back. I'm not a billionaire anymore, Charlotte corrected. She'd kept $500 million, enough to fund the foundation and ensure Ethan's care, and donated the rest. Besides, the story isn't about money. It's about survival. A knock at the door interrupted them. Charlotte's assistant entered, looking uncomfortable. Miss Sterling, there's someone here, Emma Johnson. She says it's urgent. Charlotte recognized the name. Alex's almost fiancée who'd thanked her before the trial. Send her in. Emma entered, but she wasn't the composed woman from 18 months ago. Her designer clothes couldn't hide the exhaustion. The careful makeup couldn't fully cover the fading bruise on her cheekbone. He's tracking me, Emma said without preamble. Alex, we got back together 6 months ago. He promised he'd changed, went through therapy, seemed different. But it's starting again, the surveillance, the paranoia. Last week he accused me of cheating because I had lunch with my brother. Charlotte felt her chest tighten, not with surprise, but with weary recognition. Did he hit you? No, never physical, but he grabbed my phone, threw it against the wall when he found texts from a male colleague. The bruise is from dodging the debris. You need to leave, now. I'm pregnant. The words hung in the air like a repeated tragedy. Charlotte sank into a chair, Ethan squirming to get down and explore. How far along? 12 weeks. He doesn't know yet. After what happened with you, I'm terrified to tell him. Charlotte watched Ethan toddle toward the window, pressing his small hands against the glass. Her son, who'd survived despite his father's cruelty, who called Mama with pure joy, who saw his father 2 supervised hours a week in a neutral location where Alex played the part of engaged dad under the watchful eye of a court-appointed supervisor. Here's what you're going to do, Charlotte said, her voice steady with hard-earned authority. Document everything, every accusation, every incident, screenshots, recordings if legal in New York, photos of any property damage. Open a separate bank account he doesn't know about. Contact Diana, she'll take your case. And Emma, don't tell him about the pregnancy until you're somewhere safe with legal protection in place. But what if he changes? What if therapy? Alex has been in therapy for 18 months. He still shows up to visitation with questions about where I take Ethan, who we see, whether I'm dating. Last month, he hired a private investigator to follow us, claiming it was for Ethan's safety. Charlotte pulled up something on her phone. This is from his supervised visit 3 days ago. The video showed Alex playing blocks with Ethan while the supervisor sat nearby. Alex's voice was clear. Does Mommy have any special friends who visit? Does anyone else read you bedtime stories? Even through his son, he was still trying to surveil her. Emma's face crumbled. He's not going to change, is he? People can change, but Alex, he'd have to give up control, and control is more important to him than love. Always has been. How did you survive it? Charlotte looked at her son, now stacking blocks with intense concentration. I almost didn't, but Ethan did, and that was enough. Emma left with Diana's contact information and a promise to check in daily. Charlotte knew she'd likely disappear for a few days, maybe weeks, wrestling with the decision. The cycle was predictable. That evening, Charlotte attended a fundraising gala for the Phoenix Foundation. Not as the desperate woman dragged from a stage, but as the survivor who'd rebuilt from ashes. The room was full of supporters, donors, and women whose lives the foundation had changed. Charlotte Sterling doesn't just write checks, the keynote speaker, a senator from New York, proclaimed. She built an entire ecosystem of support for financial abuse survivors. The Phoenix app has helped identify hidden assets worth over $200 million. The legal fund has supported 800 women through divorce proceedings. This is what happens when personal pain transforms into public good. The applause was thunderous. Charlotte stood, Ethan on her hip. She'd long ago stopped caring about looking professional versus being a present mother. As she approached the podium, she saw him in the back. Alex, uninvited, unwelcome, but there. Security moved to intercept, but Charlotte shook her head. Let him see. 18 months ago, I stood on a stage much like this one, she began, her voice carrying clearly. But that night, I was publicly humiliated, accused of adultery while pregnant, and dragged away in front of hundreds. My husband, ex-husband, believed elaborate lies because they confirmed his deepest fear, that everyone would eventually betray him. She looked directly at Alex. That fear became a self-fulfilling prophecy. By treating those who loved him as future traitors, he created the very abandonment he dreaded. But I'm not here to talk about him. I'm here to talk about the woman who sat in a NICU for 6 months, the woman who heard her parents disown her over a lie, the woman who was handed divorce papers during premature labor. That woman survived. And if she could survive, so can every woman in this room, every woman watching online, every woman who thinks his money makes him untouchable. The crowd rose to their feet. Alex slipped out during the ovation, his appearance a footnote Charlotte would later delete from her memory. The next morning brought news. Alexander Sterling engaged to tech heiress Emma Johnson. Third time's the charm? Charlotte immediately called Emma. No answer. She tried again. On the 5th call, Emma picked up. I know what you're going to say. I'm going to say that when you're ready, truly ready, the Phoenix Foundation will be here. Our doors don't close, not even for those who need multiple attempts to leave. He seems so sincere. Emma, I'm going to tell you something I wish someone had told me. Sincere and safe are not the same thing. Alex is probably sincere in his desire to change, but desire is an ability, and his inability to change doesn't have to become your tragedy. After the call, Charlotte watched Ethan playing with his therapeutic team, occupational therapy for his delayed fine motor skills, speech therapy for his language development, all consequences of his premature birth. Mama, he said clearly, holding up a crayon drawing of 2 figures. Mama and Ethan. Where's Daddy? The therapist asked gently. Ethan looked confused. To him, Daddy was the man who appeared for 2 hours on Saturdays, who brought expensive toys Ethan was too young to appreciate, who asked strange questions about Mama's friends. Daddy Saturday, Ethan finally said, already turning back to his drawing. Charlotte's phone rang. Alex, you poisoned Emma against me. Emma came to me with a bruise on her face, Alex. I never touched her. That was an accident. Like my hemorrhaging during labor was an accident. Like Ethan's premature birth was an accident. I'm different now. The therapy that hasn't stopped you from hiring private investigators to follow us? From interrogating our toddler son about my personal life? Silence, then. I just want to know you're both safe. No, Alex, you want to know you're in control. There's a difference. She hung up and blocked the number. He'd find other ways to contact her. He always did. But for today, there was peace. That afternoon, Charlotte sat in her office reviewing the Phoenix Foundation's expansion plans. They were opening centers in Los Angeles, Chicago, Houston. The waiting list for services was 3 months long. The need was infinite. Her computer chimed with a news alert. Victoria Chase, early release denied, remains in federal prison. Charlotte felt nothing. Victoria was a footnote now, a cautionary tale about revenge consuming the avenger. Her assistant knocked. Ms. Sterling, there's someone here. Says she's your mother. Charlotte hadn't spoken to her parents in 18 months. They'd sent letters, apologies, checks she'd returned unopened. But something made her nod. Send her in. Patricia Hayes entered like she was approaching a wounded animal. Cautious, remorseful, aged by guilt. She looked at Ethan playing in his corner of the office and tears fell. He's beautiful. He's a survivor. Charlotte, there aren't words for what we did, how we failed you. No, there aren't. They stood in silence, 2 women separated by more than distance. Your father had a heart attack, Patricia finally said. Minor, but enough to make us think. We've been living with the weight of abandoning you, of choosing appearance over our daughter. We don't expect forgiveness. We just wanted you to know that we know we were wrong. Charlotte studied her mother, this woman who had raised her to be strong but crumbled at the first test of that strength. Ethan doesn't have grandparents, Charlotte said slowly. He has me, his foundation family, his therapeutic team. But no grandparents. If you want to try, there would be conditions, strict ones. Anything. You never question my parenting. You never mention Alex unless I bring him up. You never suggest reconciliation. You respect that I'm not religious anymore. Your church's betrayal ended that. And you understand that forgiveness, if it comes, will be earned over years, not granted in moments. Patricia nodded, tears flowing freely. We'll earn it, however long it takes. 2 years after the divorce, Charlotte stood before Congress, testifying about financial abuse in high-net-worth marriages. C-SPAN carried it live. Her testimony would later be credited with passing the Financial Abuse Prevention Act. Senators, when people hear about my $4 billion settlement, they think I won, but I want to show you what victory actually looks like. Charlotte pulled up a photo on the screen behind her. This is my son, Ethan, at 8 months, finally breathing without assistance. He was born at 23 weeks because stress from financial and emotional abuse triggered premature labor. His medical bills for the first 2 years exceeded $6 million. She clicked to the next slide. These are the 73 women who've died from domestic violence escalation after their wealthy partners cut off their resources. Financial abuse is abuse, whether it's $20,000 or $20 billion being weaponized. Senator Harrison from New York leaned forward. Mrs. Sterling, your ex-husband has submitted testimony claiming your foundation unfairly targets successful men in divorce proceedings. Senator, the Phoenix Foundation has helped 12 men escape financially abusive relationships with wealthy partners. Abuse knows no gender. My ex-husband objects to accountability, not advocacy. He also claims you've prevented him from having a relationship with his son. Charlotte pulled up another document. These are the court-appointed supervisor's reports from 2 years of visits. Mr. Sterling has used every interaction to interrogate our son about my personal life, violated no-contact orders 47 times, and hired 6 different private investigation firms to surveil us. Last month, he attempted to enroll Ethan in a boarding school in Switzerland without my knowledge or consent. So yes, his access remains supervised. The hearing continued for 3 hours. Charlotte presented data, case studies, and the harsh reality that wealth often amplified rather than alleviated abuse. When she finished, the committee voted unanimously to advance the bill. Outside the Capitol, protesters held signs, some supporting her, others calling her a gold digger who destroyed an innocent billionaire. Charlotte ignored them all, focusing on the text from Diane. Emma Johnson just filed for divorce. She's 7 months pregnant and ready to fight. Charlotte flew back to New York immediately. Emma was at the Phoenix Foundation, surrounded by the legal team, her belly visible beneath a loose sweater. He found the pregnancy test I'd hidden, Emma explained, exhausted. Demanded a paternity test immediately. When I refused, he locked me in our bedroom for 6 hours until I agreed. The test proved it's his, but he's convinced I manipulated it somehow. Where is he now? Board meeting. Sterling Tech called an emergency session. Someone leaked his psychiatric evaluation from the custody battle, the one that diagnosed him with severe paranoid personality disorder and narcissistic features. Stock's down 60% this year. Charlotte's phone rang. Alex. She almost didn't answer, then decided Emma should hear this. Charlotte, I know Emma's with you. Tell her this is a mistake. She's carrying my child. Like I was carrying your child when you destroyed my life. That was different. Victoria had manipulated. Alex, listen to yourself. It's always someone else's fault. Victoria manipulated you. I betrayed you. Emma's lying to you. When does it become your responsibility? I've been in therapy for 3 years, and you're still surveilling people, still paranoid, still convinced everyone's betraying you. Therapy only works if you actually want to change, not just want to appear changed. I'm getting better. Emma took the phone. Alex, I'm done. The baby and I deserve better than your conditional love and constant suspicion. Hi, Manamy, please. She hung up. That evening, Charlotte was home with Ethan, a real home now, not a penthouse or estate, but a brownstone in Brooklyn with a garden and neighbors who knew them as Charlie and her son, not as the billionaire's ex-wife. They were reading bedtime stories when her security system alerted. Someone was at the gate. The camera showed Alex, disheveled, clearly drunk. Charlotte called 911 first, then activated the recording system. She didn't go to the door. "Charlotte," Alex shouted, "I know you're in there. You've turned everyone against me. Emma, the board, even my own son." Ethan looked up from his book, confused. "Mama, why is Daddy yelling?" "Daddy's sick, sweetheart. Sometimes people's minds get sick, and they can't think clearly." "Will he get better?" Charlotte watched through the security monitor as police arrived, as Alex argued with them, as they finally let him away. He'd violate the restraining order again. He always did. The cycle was as predictable as it was pathetic. "I don't know, baby. Some people get better, some don't. Are we safe?" She pulled him close, this miracle child who'd survived against odds, who bore the scars of his father's choices in his scarred lungs and delayed development, but not in his spirit. "We're safe. Mama makes sure we're always safe." The next morning brought predictable headlines. Sterling heir arrested at ex-wife's home, mental health crisis or harassment. But it also brought something, Maz. A call from Marcus Thompson, her former fiancé who'd risked everything to expose the truth. "Charlotte, I wanted you to know I'm getting married next month. She's wonderful. A teacher, nothing to do with tech or billions or any of that. I'm happy for you, Marcus. Really. I also wanted to thank you for not hating me for introducing you to Alex all those years ago. If you hadn't, Ethan wouldn't exist. And despite everything, he's worth it all." After the call, Charlotte stood in her office at the Phoenix Foundation, looking at the wall of photos. Women who'd escaped, who'd survived, who'd rebuilt. 3 years after that horrible night at the gala, she'd transformed personal devastation into systemic change. Her assistant knocked. "Ms. Sterling? Time magazine is here for the Person of the Year photo shoot." Charlotte laughed. "Tell them to set up in the Survivor Resource Room. If they're going to photograph me, it should be where the real work happens." As she walked through her foundation, Ethan's hand in hers, employees and clients nodding respectfully, Charlotte realized something. She'd won. Not the divorce, not the money, but something more profound. She'd refused to let Alex's paranoia define her story's ending. "Mama," Ethan said, pointing to a photo on the wall, Charlotte testifying before Congress. "That's you. That's me, baby, fighting for people who need help. Like superhero? Like a superhero." Her phone buzzed. A news alert. Alexander Sterling steps down as CEO, enters psychiatric treatment facility. Charlotte deleted it without reading more. Alex's story was no longer her concern, but then another call, an unknown number with a Virginia area code. "Mrs. Sterling, this is Dr. Patricia Reeves from Blue Ridge Psychiatric Center. Mr. Sterling has voluntarily committed himself for intensive treatment. He's asked if you'd be willing to participate in a family session. Not for reconciliation, but for closure." Charlotte looked at Ethan, coloring happily at a small table, safe and loved and thriving despite everything. "Dr. Reeves, I gave Alex closure when I refused to let his paranoia destroy our son. When I rebuilt from nothing. When I created something beautiful from his ugliness, that's all the closure either of us needs." She hung up, then knelt beside Ethan. "Want to help Mama with something special?" "Yes." Together they walked to the conference room where Emma Johnson sat with her newborn daughter, born healthy at full term, gathering documents for her divorce filing. "Emma, meet Ethan. Ethan, this is baby Sarah." Ethan peered at the infant with wonder. "She's little." "You were smaller," Charlotte told him, "but look how strong you are now." Emma looked up with tears. "How do I do this? How do I protect her from him?" Charlotte sat beside her, Ethan climbing into her lap. "You document everything. You never meet him alone. You use every resource available. And you remember that his sickness doesn't define your daughter's future. He's already claiming I trapped him with pregnancy. Of course he is. It's his pattern. But patterns can be broken. Not by him, but by us. By refusing to let his paranoia infect another generation." 5 years after the divorce, Charlotte stood in the Phoenix Foundation's newest facility, a 50-story building in downtown Manhattan that had once housed Sterling Tech's headquarters. The irony was delicious. Alex's former empire now served as the base for the organization built from its ashes. "Mom, do I have to wear a tie?" 8-year-old Ethan tugged at his collar, his green eyes, so like his father's but warm with humor, pleading for reprieve. "Just for the ceremony, sweetheart. Then you can change." Today marked the Phoenix Foundation's 5th anniversary in its evolution from a domestic violence nonprofit into a global force for financial justice. They'd helped 50,000 people escape financial abuse, recovered $2 billion in hidden assets, and changed laws in 30 states. Charlotte, Diane Miller, now Secretary of Health and Human Services, embraced her. "Ready for your speech?" "As ready as one can be to address the United Nations." The General Assembly had invited Charlotte to speak about economic violence as a human rights violation. But first, there was someone she needed to see. In a quiet room away from the celebration, Alex sat with his psychiatrist. 5 years of intensive treatment had changed him. Not into someone safe enough for unsupervised contact with Ethan, but into someone who could finally acknowledge the damage he'd caused. "Thank you for agreeing to this," Dr. Reeves said. "Mr. Sterling has something he needs to say." Alex looked older, medication and therapy having softened his sharp edges, but also dimmed his commanding presence. "Charlotte, I've written and rewritten this 1,000 times." He pulled out a letter, hands trembling slightly. "I need to read this. Not for forgiveness, I know that's impossible, but for accountability." Charlotte nodded, sitting carefully distant. "Dear Charlotte and Ethan," Alex began, his voice breaking, "I am the architect of my own destruction and, more importantly, of your suffering. No manipulation by Victoria, no paranoid personality disorder, no traumatic first marriage excuses what I did. I chose surveillance over trust. I chose cruelty over communication. I chose my paranoid delusions over my pregnant wife and unborn child." He paused, struggling. "Ethan, you don't know me as a father. You know me as the supervised visitor who brings inappropriate gifts and asks invasive questions. That's my fault. I turned what should have been love into possession, protection into control. Charlotte, you built an empire of healing from the rubble of our marriage. You saved not just yourself and Ethan, but thousands of others. I built an empire of surveillance that couldn't even save me from myself." He folded the letter, placing it on the table between them. "I'm signing away all parental rights. Ethan deserves to grow up without the shadow of my dysfunction. I've also transferred my remaining Sterling Tech shares, worth approximately $300 million, to the Phoenix Foundation. It's not redemption, it's barely restitution, but it's what I can do." Charlotte studied the man she'd once loved, then feared, then pitied. "Why now?" "Because Emma's daughter Sarah starts kindergarten next year. She doesn't know me, Emma rightfully kept me away. But she'll learn about me eventually. When she does, I want her to know that mental illness might explain behavior, but it doesn't excuse it. That her mother was right to protect her. That sometimes the greatest act of love is accepting you're incapable of providing it safely. And Ethan? Tell him his biological father loved him the only way a broken person could, from a distance that kept him safe." Charlotte stood. "I'll tell him the truth, that his father was a brilliant man whose mind turned that brilliance into a weapon against those closest to him. That mental illness and wealth created a perfect storm of control and paranoia. But also that his father finally, eventually, chose to stop inflicting himself on others." She left without goodbye. There was nothing more to say. The UN speech went viral within hours. Charlotte stood at the podium where world leaders had spoken, Ethan in the front row between his adoptive father, Marcus Thompson, who'd married Charlotte 3 years after reconnecting, and his grandmother Patricia, who'd spent 5 years earning back trust. "5 years ago, I was dragged from a stage, publicly humiliated while pregnant, accused of adultery by a husband who knew the accusation was false, but whose paranoia override truth. Today I stand before you not as a victim, but as proof that economic violence is violence, regardless of whether it involves $20 or $20 billion. She spoke for 30 minutes about the intersection of wealth, power, and abuse, about how financial control was often the first and last chain keeping victims trapped, about how the Phoenix Foundation had created a model now being replicated in 40 countries. My ex-husband once built an empire on surveillance technology, convinced that watching everything would keep him safe. But paranoia is a prison you build around yourself, bar by bar, until you've locked out everyone who might have loved you. The Phoenix Foundation builds bridges instead of walls, trust instead of surveillance, hope instead of control. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Later, at the anniversary gala, Charlotte watched Ethan play with Sarah Mitchell, Emma's daughter. The two children, connected by their father's dysfunction but not defined by it, laughed over a shared game on Ethan's tablet. "They're resilient," Emma said, joining Charlotte. Emma had married a pediatrician 2 years ago, someone who'd never heard of Sterling Tech until after they'd met. Stronger than they should have to be. All survivors are. Did you see the news? Alex's psychiatric facility is using his case as a teaching model for treating paranoid personality disorder in high-wealth individuals. At least something useful came from it all. Marcus appeared with champagne, kissing Charlotte's cheek. Their twin daughters, 2 years old, toddled behind him, chased by their nanny. He'd officially adopted Ethan last year, giving the boy the father he deserved. "Time for your toast," he said. Charlotte climbed on the stage, looking out at the 1,000 people gathered. Survivors, advocates, donors, politicians, her family. Behind her, the Manhattan skyline glittered. Sterling Tech's former logo now replaced with a phoenix in flight. 5 years ago, a billionaire thought his wife betrayed him. He was wrong about the betrayal, but right about one thing: I did destroy him. Not through cheating, but through surviving, through refusing to let his paranoia be the final word, through transforming pain into purpose. She raised her glass. "To every person trapped in financial abuse, your worth isn't measured in dollars but in courage. To every survivor here, you are the phoenix, risen from ashes someone else set aflame. And to those still fighting, we see you, we believe you, and we're here when you're ready. To the Phoenix Foundation, may we rise until no one needs us anymore." The crowd erupted. Fireworks lit the sky outside, spelling Phoenix in gold and crimson. Ethan ran to the stage, and Charlotte lifted him, this miracle child who'd survived his premature birth, who called Marcus dad and knew Alex only as a cautionary tale in his mother's incredible story. "Mom," Ethan whispered, "are you crying?" "Happy tears, baby. Sometimes we cry when we win." Did we win? Charlotte looked at her son, healthy despite his rough start, loved beyond measure, surrounded by people who'd chosen family over blood, trust over surveillance, healing over revenge. "Yes, sweetheart, we won everything that matters." As the celebration continued below, Charlotte stood at the window of what had been Alex's office, now transformed into a children's play area for clients' kids. The city spread before her, full of people trapped in their own versions of her story. Her phone buzzed, a message from a number she didn't recognize. "My husband tracks everything. Found your story online. Is there hope?" Charlotte smiled, typing back, "There's always hope. The Phoenix Foundation is here when you're ready to rise." She pocketed the phone and returned to the party, to her chosen family, to the life built from ashes. Behind her, the Phoenix logo glowed against the night sky, not an ending, but an eternal beginning. In Blue Ridge Psychiatric Center, Alexander Sterling sat in his single room, watching the celebration on the news. His therapist had said viewing it might trigger a paranoid episode, but for once, the paranoia was quiet. He saw Charlotte, radiant and powerful. He saw Ethan, the son he'd never know, laughing with another man he called father. He saw Emma, protected and thriving. He'd lost everything by trying to control everything. The irony was perfect, brutal, and entirely self-inflicted. He turned off the television and returned to his journal, part of his therapeutic process. Tonight's entry was simple. She was never the betrayer, I was. I betrayed every promise, every vow, every chance at happiness because I couldn't trust. Paranoia isn't protection, it's poison. And the only antidote is accepting that some things, once broken, can never be repaired, only released. He closed the journal and looked at the photo on his nightstand, not of Charlotte or Ethan, but of himself from a decade ago, accepting an award for Sterling Tech's innovation in surveillance technology. The man in the photo radiated confidence, power, control. He'd thought watching everything would keep him safe from betrayal. Instead, it had made him the betrayer. The next morning brought Charlotte one final communication from Alex's legal team, the signed documents terminating his parental rights, the transfer of shares to the Phoenix Foundation, and a single line in his handwriting. Tell Ethan his mother is the strongest person I ever knew, and I was too weak to deserve her. Charlotte filed the papers without ceremony. The past was finally, legally, emotionally closed. 6 months later, the Phoenix Foundation's work caught the attention of the Nobel Committee. Charlotte stood in Oslo, accepting the Peace Prize for transforming personal trauma into a global movement for economic justice and survivor empowerment. This prize belongs to every survivor who chose to rise, she said, Ethan and Marcus in the audience, their twin daughters sleeping in their laps. To everyone who refused to let someone else's sickness define their story's ending. We are proof that phoenixes are not mythical. They're human, and they rise every single day. The final image broadcast worldwide. Charlotte Sterling, once publicly humiliated and discarded, now standing as a beacon of survival. Her son, premature but thriving, fatherless but deeply loved, running to embrace her on the world stage. In homes across the globe, trapped spouses saw the broadcast and thought, if she could rise from that, maybe I can too. And in a psychiatric facility in Virginia, Alexander Sterling watched his ex-wife accept humanity's highest honor for cleaning up the destruction he'd caused. He felt no paranoia, no anger, no delusion that she'd stolen something from him. For the first time in his life, he felt the truth. She hadn't betrayed him. She'd survived him. And in surviving, she'd saved not just herself and their son, but thousands of others from men just like him. He turned off the television and attended his group therapy session, where he would spend the rest of his years trying to understand how brilliance had become paranoia, how love had become control, how protection had become destruction. Meanwhile, Charlotte flew home to Brooklyn, Nobel Prize in her carry-on, Ethan asleep against her shoulder, Marcus holding their daughters, ready for the next woman who would text. Is there hope? There was always hope. The Phoenix Foundation proved it every day. 5 years turned to 10. Ethan grew tall and kind, his early struggles leaving him empathetic rather than bitter. He knew his origin story, the father whose paranoia nearly killed him, the mother whose strength saved him, the adoptive father who chose to love him, the foundation born from his survival. On his 18th birthday, a letter arrived from Blue Ridge Psychiatric Center. Charlotte recognized Alex's handwriting, now shaky with age and medication. Your mother will decide if you ever read this, but I wanted you to know. You were wanted, you were loved, just not by someone capable of expressing it safely. Your mother saved you from me. That was her greatest gift to both of us. Live freely, love freely, trust freely. Everything I couldn't do. Charlotte handed Ethan the letter without comment. He read it once, then placed it in a box labeled Origins. Not treasured, not destroyed, just acknowledged. Do you want to respond? Charlotte asked. No, Ethan said simply. He said what he needed to say. I heard it. That's enough. That night, the Phoenix Foundation hosted its annual gala. Ethan gave his first speech as an adult, announcing his plan to become a psychiatrist specializing in paranoid personality disorders. My biological father's mental illness taught me that brilliance without emotional intelligence is dangerous, that wealth without wisdom is weaponized, that paranoia is fear wearing the mask of protection, he said. I want to help people before they destroy everyone around them, before they create more Phoenix stories. In the audience, Emma Johnson's daughter Sarah applauded, herself headed to law school to become a family advocate. The 2 children born from Sterling, paranoia had chosen healing professions, breaking cycles with every choice. Charlotte watched her son speak with the same composure she'd found in ashes 20 years ago. The boy who'd weighed 2 pounds, 3 ounces, whose father had abandoned him during his birth, stood 6 feet tall, confident, and free from the paranoia that had poisoned his origins. Marcus took her hand, their twin daughters, now 17, beside them. They'd built a life of trust, transparency, and genuine love. No surveillance, no paranoia, no conditions. As the evening ended, Charlotte stood where Sterling Tech's boardroom had once been, now the Phoenix Foundation's memorial wall. Photos of women who died from financial abuse before they could escape. Their faces reminded everyone why the work continued. Her phone buzzed with the night's final message from a woman in Tokyo. My husband controls everything. But I saw your story. Tomorrow I'm leaving. The Phoenix Foundation Tokyo is helping. Thank you for showing me I could rise. Charlotte smiled, typing back, rise strong, rise proud, rise free. Outside, Manhattan glittered with promise and pain, with triumph and tragedy, with countless stories of control and freedom playing out in penthouses and tenements alike. The Phoenix Foundation stood as testament that survival was possible, that rising was real, that sometimes the greatest revenge was simply refusing to remain in the ashes someone else created. Ethan appeared beside her. Mom, ready to go home? Home, a brownstone in Brooklyn, where surveillance meant checking the baby monitor for the twins' adopted infant brother, where trust meant nobody questioned anyone's whereabouts, where love meant freedom, not possession. Yes, sweetheart, let's go home. As they left, Charlotte passed the portrait that hung in the lobby, Ondinium. Not of her, but of a phoenix rising from flames, wings spread wide, eyes focused not on the ashes below, but on the infinite sky above. Beneath it, a simple plaque. For everyone still in the ashes, your rise is coming. The Phoenix Foundation's light stayed on through the night, staffed by survivors who answered calls, offered resources, and whispered to frightened voices, you're not crazy. It's not your fault. You can rise from this. And somewhere in psychiatric facilities, prisons, and penthouses, the paranoid and controlling heard about the Phoenix Foundation's work and felt the first crack in their certainty that surveillance meant safety, that control meant love. Most would never change, but their victims would rise anyway. That was Charlotte Sterling's true revenge. Not destroying Alex, but making him irrelevant. Building something so powerful, so transformative, that his paranoia became nothing more than a footnote in a story about triumph. The billionaire thought his wife betrayed him. He was wrong. She became something far more dangerous than a betrayer. She became a phoenix, and phoenixes rise, always.